Excellent. Well, welcome everybody today to our We Do webinar, and it's going to be Innovation Through Inclusivity. And I'm Barry Fry. For those of you that don't know, the DPAA CEO, and Blake is controlling the mechanism. So you can go to the next one, Mr. Blake Kelly. Thank you. We have an array of events and activities, and in addition to the Clear Channel, Kate and just Kate, give me the other name there.
Michelle.
Nate and Michelle logo. We've got many others. Oh, hi, Diane from Nielsen. Nice to see you. So these are all the DPAA event and member activities. Some have been going on this week, and we've got lots more coming up. Make sure that you are on the mailing list and you come to them. Let's continue. Thank you. Our DPAA Homeroom Series, Defining Digital Audiences, sponsored by Precisely, will be a great one coming up May 20th. I think that's going to be at 11 o'clock. Thank you. And then in addition to that, we've got brand loyalty during this Corona issue, sponsored by M4, and that'll be on June 9th, also at 11 o'clock. And then make sure you join us for our DPAA member meeting and town hall. That'll be June 15th. 11 o'clock is our favorite time. And that will be for all members all over the world. And we're going to have some guest speakers from ad agencies, from CMOs, thought leaders, and some great chats going on there. Make sure you mark your calendar. June 15th, our member meeting in Town Hall, 11 o'clock. And then our Canadian Summit, which we did have live last year in the Clydesdale neighborhood of Toronto, will now be virtual over Zoom, but we got some special things planned. 11 o'clock again, July 15th. And then there's the big Video Everywhere Global Summit scheduled for October 13th. Live, virtual, we don't know, but we're hopeful, and one way or another we'll have that. So in summary, these are all our products and activities for DPAA members all around the world. People have been getting a lot of value out of that. Make sure you see our short connects where we hear from advertising CEOs and leaders of brands of what they think about the out-of-home world, and also keeping it in front of them. So before I turn it over to Jen, today we have our important topic is building inclusive work cultures, and research has shown that more inclusive work cultures have better results. This is important for men as well as women, and we want to be inclusive, and Jen has done an amazing job of keeping the world open to men that she's created here, which men didn't do a very good job of doing before that. So this webinar today will arm you with the tools that you can take back with you and begin to help your own company's culture more inclusive. So Jen Willie, thank you for putting this all together. Thank you, Blake Kelly and Ajay Durrani, and enjoy this member event and get smart and get inclusive. Thank you, Jen.
Well, thank you, Barry, and thank you all for being here. This is about helping each and every one of you. So the women who are here, we're thrilled that you're here. Certainly the incredible WE.DOOH Advisory Board. Thank you for all of your input and friendship. It's really helpful in terms of steering the direction of how we're supporting women in the digital out-of-home community and beyond, thanks to the leadership of DPAA. And also, as Barry had pointed out, all those different events, I also want to keep you focused on the fact that we have a lot of events that are coming up for WE.DOOH for the remainder of the year. So mark your calendar for all of those as well. But as I'd mentioned, this is helpful for the women, but this specific event is really designed for leaders, regardless of your gender. Especially important for men to understand what they can do to be better man ambassadors or allies, or whatever term that you want to use. And that's because we believe very strongly that solving inclusivity is really like solving a complex math equation. You cannot solve the problem by just looking at one problem alone. And that's why it's so critical that we're all here together. We like to think of the formula for being a fearless modern leader is by pulling these 4 different variables together. You've got IQ, intelligence, EQ, emotional intelligence, AQ, which is especially important in this world, which is your adaptability or adaptability quotient, and CQ, which is your cultural intelligence. And we'll be focusing on all of those things that we have in our time today, where we'll be focusing on how you can create an inclusive environment to accelerate innovation. Now, while the material that we have today will address many different marginalized communities, whether that's based on race, religion, gender, age, ability, disability, uh, keep in mind that this was originally designed for the women of the digital out-of-home industry. So we will be paying particular attention during our time together today of not only why inclusivity is good for business, but why it's especially good for innovation, and having that lens on it where we'll pay particular attention to what is holding women back and what you can do as a leader, as a man who's working on a team with women, or perhaps has female employees or a boss that you report to. And certainly keep this in mind for any of the men out there who are dads and brothers and children. I'm going to guess that a few of the men on this fit one of those categories. And very importantly, we're going to talk about what you can do about this. So not just from the leadership perspective, but you individually, what it is that you can do. So let's start off with the innovation piece. Some fascinating research that came out shows that in an analysis that was done with 3,000 companies over the course of 13 years, that those companies that had a more diverse makeup were those that were more innovative across the board. And they looked at the patents that were issued over the course of those companies. And in order to be considered a more diverse company, they look at 4 different measures. So do they have women and minorities as CEOs? Are women and people of color in P&L, profit and loss responsibility and positions? Are there positive policies in place for their LGBTQ plus employees? And do they have programs that will help them bring disabled employees into the fold? And what they found were those companies that were more diverse actually issued patents for 2 extra products per year, which is double the average. But there was something else really important about those companies. When they looked at the 2008 economic crisis, those were the companies that were more resilient. And so considering the times that we are in right now, any leg up that you can give yourself to thrive through this time of adversity is something that you want to make a priority in what you're doing. And not only is it about creating more innovative products and services, but it's about that translating into revenue. And so this Boston Consulting Group research study that was done showed that when they looked at companies, and again, diversity scores, those companies that were more diverse and had the highest scores had 45% of their revenue coming from what they consider innovation revenue. And those are products and services that were launched over the course of the past 3 years. Look at that compared to those less diverse companies where only 26%. So again, think about a 19% difference in terms of being able to drive revenue for your company. What could that do for your business during this crisis? And it's not just around innovation, it's about productivity and performance across the board. So there was a landmark study done by Forbes that looked at 600 business decisions across 200 teams. And what they found were better business decisions 87% of the time, and 60% better results for those companies that were the most diverse. So there's tons of other research. We could spend the next 5 hours sharing research studies for you. However, what we want to focus on is how do we solve the problem? Okay, if anybody needs more research, send us a note. We are happy to send a lot your way, but let's focus on fixing the issue. Because what we're seeing is that with all this great research out there, things aren't moving that much. And in conversations that I have with people, they say, oh, there's, since Me Too, everything's been corrected and there's women in leadership everywhere. If you take a look at this 2019 McKinsey survey, what they found was if you look on the left side, pre-Me Too, this is what the composition of women look like from on the left at level A, entry level, all the way up to F, which is C-suite. Look at today. When you look at the full calendar year last year, yes, was there some progress? Yeah. Was there enough progress? Absolutely not. As you can see, there's been very small step changes and not the kinds of exponential growth that we need in order for companies to take full advantage of diversity. And a big problem related to this is what's called the broken rung. And that's because we think about climbing the career ladder, and the broken rung stands for that first step up into management. Again, the McKinsey results show that for every 100 men that are promoted into management for the first time, only 72 women are promoted. And when you look at how that fares for our sisters who are Latina and women of color, you're looking at 68 out of 100 for Latinas and only 58 Black women compared to men. That, again, has got to change. This is such an important global issue that the United Nations has created what they call their Women's Empowerment Principles. You can see principles 1 through 7 here, and in the handout that you can get, which is in the chat, you'll find the link there. Just click on that link and you'll be able to download the handout that we'll be going through together throughout the course of this workshop. And in addition to some of the exercises that we'll be doing for you to think about how you're going to apply what we learn, there's also lots of resources in there where for all of the research studies and references that we're talking about, books that we're recommending, you can click through and access every single one of those. And we invested the time to create that for you because we don't want this to be just a one and done webinar that you attend. We want this to start the journey for you of creating a more inclusive and collaborative culture. And we know to do that, you need the tools in order to make that happen. Now, one thing that we'd love to understand as we are spending our time together is what are all of your organizations like that? So we want to make this interactive. So what we're going to have you do is if you can open up another browser window or on your phone, you can get to, and we're here in Facebook Live, you can see, you can get to a site called mentimeter.com. You'll actually type in menti.com into the, for the URL, menti.com. You should see it right on the top of your screen. You might have videos in the way, move that out of the way. It's menti.com. Once you get there, you'll put in the code 114482. Okay, so even if you're joining us on Facebook Live, you can follow along with us. If you're joining us by phone, again, open up a browser window on your phone, go to MEN as in Nancy, T as in Thomas, I as in igloo.com and type in 114482. And that will allow you in real time to share your experience and what is it like for you at your workplace, that we can get a real sense of where the industry is today and where it is that we need to go. Because without knowing what the challenges are today, then how do we build a roadmap for the future? You can't do it. So again, get there, let us hear your voice. Share your perspective. I'm going to check in the chat to see if there's any issues with anyone being able to get there. It doesn't look like there is. And you can always put any comments right in the chat. For anybody who might be joining by Facebook Live, I am not seeing the chat in real time. I'm looking at the Zoom chat right now, but someone from our team, if you have an issue, will be able to add that to our Zoom chat as well. So we have less than half of you have weighed in so far, but I see more results coming in. We're going to have a few more of these because we really want to get a sense of the lay of the land in the industry. We've got about 28 of you so far. So when you look about being trained on bias in the workplace, which is one of the core women empowerment principles, we can see that you're about middle of the road. Being trained to identify expressions of bias when you're talking to employees about competence and potential, even less. And this is a tough one, feeling comfortable telling colleagues that they're expressing bias. While it's higher than some of the other numbers, being at 3 out of 5, which is essentially what the numbers would be, is not good enough. And so that's some of the things that we'll be focusing on today and some of the resources that we have for all of you. And again, as we're going through this, you can use that same number to weigh in. We've got another question we want to hear from all of you on. When it comes to meeting interruptions, topic that we'll be talking about. Do you see in your organization, and answer honestly, are women frequently interrupted in your meetings? Are marginalized groups frequently interrupted? Do you see lower status employees frequently interrupted? And do you assign a monitor in your meetings to stop consistent interruptions regardless of who they're happening to? Okay, so we've got some folks coming in with some answers right now. And some of why this is helpful to see where other people stand is sometimes we might feel like we're the only ones, or we may in fact be embarrassed about our organization and feel like you don't even know where to begin. And what we're seeing here is that clearly we're all in this together. And being okay with knowing that you're not perfect today, but that you can make a commitment and a plan to making change within the organization is something that every single one of us can take on and commit to. So as you can see here, sort of middle of the road, but one of the big opportunities is thinking about in meetings, if you are seeing folks frequently interrupted, to assign someone as the monitor who, whenever they catch someone for that week's meeting, they'll say, okay, Bob, hold that thought. That's a great one. Let's let Kate finish. Okay, so that's an easy way to make sure that everybody gets heard. Let's talk about some of those gender-based assumptions that we'll be focusing on. Do you see that women are expected in your organization to plan the holiday and the social activities? Are they expected to clean up the meeting rooms? And are they the ones who are planning the celebrations of birthdays and baby showers across the board? And after this, I think we've got one more question. We're going to start jumping into how we solve for some of these things. Okay, so I'm glad to see, at least from the results so far, women aren't necessarily expected to clean up the meeting rooms. That's a step in the right direction. But it's some of this, what's called invisible work, as it relates to building a culture of holiday activities, social activities, celebrations within the organization. Women are quite often, as you can see here, expected to be doing a lot of that work that is rarely ever recognized or contributing to promotions and advancement within the workplace. Certainly, it makes it a more fun and a better place to work and increases employee loyalty and retention, but does not help that woman who takes it on for herself to try and help make it a better place to work. So something that you want to keep in mind as a leader. So what we're going to do now is we are going to stop sharing these results, and we can share that back out with you for anybody who may be interested in seeing that, if you want to share it across your organization. And we're going to start jumping into how we can use our fearless fundamentals to focus on each one of these key areas that we need to address to make everyone a more inclusive leader. So we'll be focusing today on 5 areas: control, courage, communication, connection, and confidence. And so let's start off on the control front. And let's think about harassment and what that means. Now, this workshop is not a sexual harassment workshop, so do not think about that at all. And it's not even gender harassment, which is further along the spectrum. But those are 2 real things that exist in the workplace that hopefully all of your companies are putting trainings into place. It is a requirement in some places like New York City, California, that you're having training on those topics. But I know that we have folks joining us from around the world. And so think about putting both sexual and gender harassment training into place in your workplace. But then there's bias. And bias takes form in a few different ways. So there's affinity bias, which is that our brains are wired so that we like things that are like us. It is our brain's way of letting us know that if we're okay, they're okay. And then there's unconscious bias. And unconscious bias is when you didn't even know that this was necessarily an issue for you. And it's something in many cases that you have learned throughout the course of your life. And so think about it as the script or the narrative that's been written for you based on your parents, your friends growing up, your teachers, the communities that you grew up in. Everything that happened in those early formative years are those things that contribute most to your unconscious bias. And then there may be additional things throughout the course of your career based on your own personal experiences. The vision of what you want to be able to do is to help people recognize their biases, so then you can shift to what's called conscious inclusion. And that's because what we all need to do is recognize what are those biases so that we can control them. And then conscious inclusion is where we can say, okay, I may have this underlying perception, but I can take proactive steps to include those people and embrace those people and hear the voices of those that may have a conflicting point of view for me, but that may make us all better and stronger together. So for any of you who have never taken the implicit association test, it is definitely worth the 3 minutes of your time. Project Implicit was launched by Harvard University in order to help people understand across a whole range of different biases that most of us possess. Are you in fact biased in any way? Because many of us may think, oh, I'm not biased at all. I love everyone, do good for all. But the reality is, like I said, that script that was written for you throughout the course of your life could have some of these biases for you. So it's a great place to start to recognize, do you have any biases? And then also can help you empathize with others. And again, that is in that worksheet that we put into the chat. Hopefully all of you have downloaded that already. Mary Jo, if you can also put the link to the worksheet in Facebook, if you haven't done it already, for anybody who's joining us through Facebook Live, that way we can have the entire community joining us as we're going through this together. Now, the thing with bias that's so exciting about it is that once you recognize that you have it, you have a choice. So who here, by show of hands, give me a little whoop whoop, if you remember the Choose Your Own Adventure books from growing up? Okay, I do. I see a few of you do. Blake, I'm gonna see you along with me. Why I think so many of us love these as kids is you had a choice. You could decide where you're going from here. And I like to think of bias as a Choose Your Own Adventure book. Okay, so those first few chapters, they were written for you by, again, all of those different inputs from growing up. But you now have the choice of what's that next chapter going to be. You're in control. And just because you grew up with some biases, or you know that you have them, but you don't know what to do about it, don't worry, you can now pick a new chapter. And I like to think of each and every one of us as like a butterfly that goes through 4 different stages of transformation. So they start off as an egg or a pupa, and then they become a caterpillar, which I like to think of as, okay, so you've been born, you're an egg, you have all these things that you've grown up with, and now you're just sort of trotting along through life. You can't get that far when you have all these different biases. And so if you can get to this point where you recognize that you can transform and become this chrysalis and do all of that hard work inside that may not be visible to others at first, and it may take some time, just like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, then you can go a whole lot further and farther and faster if you can work through that. So I just want you all to remember, you are butterflies, okay? Get into that chrysalis if you're not already there with us. And if you need some help understanding what it's like to be on the other side, because we do have so many male allies who are here with us today, and thank you for being here. But if you can't necessarily empathize, there is even terrific new technology out there that can help you get into the shoes of other people. One of them that I really like is called Perspectives. And what it does, they have both virtual reality as well as now through your mobile device, where you can get the experience of what it's like to be in a marginalized community. So whether that means you're a woman in a male dominated area based on race, gender, ability, you name it. And so again, information for you in the worksheet, the kind of thing that you can check out. And when it comes to control, it is so critical that we recognize that there are differences between women and men at work. And so this is some of the insights from a research study that we conducted at Wet Cement in partnership with behavioral scientists from Wharton University to understand what are some of those factors that are career limiting mindsets and behaviors that hold us back from achieving our potential. And when you look at empowerment at work, you can see, if you look at the 4 different bar graphs here, the higher it is, the more somebody thinks that they're really out of control in the workplace. And what you'll see on the left-hand side are the royal blue, and that represents women, and the teal to the right represents men. And what you'll see here is that when it comes to these 4 different areas around control and being empowered in the workplace, women across the board, and this was all done in professional settings, US-based only, but women believe that what happens to them in their job is beyond their control. They think there's little point to affect the way things are done at work. They think you just have to do what you're told and that you can't really speak up. And so for the ladies on the call here, we have got to change that, and we have to take control. And so one way that we all can do that is by putting into place the blueprint for success to have an inclusive culture. And this was just released this month by the Society for Human Resources Management here in the US. And they focus on a few key areas. So company culture, paid leave, workplace flexibility, certainly inclusion and diversity, and pay equity. And there's an important one that I want us to add in here, which is, we're gonna fast forward, is supplier diversity and working with diverse suppliers. So this is something that in a lot of the work that we do with D&I leaders, we'll see that there are some organizations who are doing phenomenal diversity and inclusion work for their employees, but they're not even thinking about supplier diversity. So who are all of those vendors and partners and products that they are bringing in, and are they looking for diversity in those places as well? Because the reality is this: only 1% of dollars go to diverse suppliers in the United States. And so that is, again, a really impacting the type of diversity that you can see across the board and getting it even out to the broader world. And so these are just some examples of different types of supplier diversity organizations. So does your company even think about this? Do they have any standards or guidelines or metrics in place to try and get diverse suppliers? These are the questions that you could be asking. It's everything from women-owned business to minority-owned business, veteran-owned businesses, disability-owned businesses, and NGLCC for the LGBT community as well. And certainly, we are very proud at Wet Cement to be diverse suppliers. We're both women-owned business as well as a disability-owned business. So part of why we pay a lot of attention to that. And so before we move on, take a moment. If you have that worksheet, you can open it up on your computer. You can print it out. You can do that too, or even just write down on a piece of paper for yourself right now. When it comes to these core areas of company culture, paid leave, flexibility at work, which may have changed a little bit now based on the world that we live in, having inclusion and diversity training and efforts that are underway, pay equity, supplier diversity. What's your company doing? Do you know across the board if there are specific programs in place across these 6 different dimensions if you add supplier diversity to their list? If not, who can you talk to? Is there somebody in HR? Can you talk to your diversity and inclusion leader? If you have a relationship with somebody at the executive level, could you have the conversation there to ask, what are we doing on this front and what could we do? So again, take a moment and think about that. And we'll be addressing that more a little bit later. Another really important piece of what the United Nations recognizes, as well as we want to underscore for you, is equalizing leadership development. And that means, especially when you think about that first rung, quite often people are asked to be a part of leadership development programs. And many times those classes are skewed predominantly male or prominently the non-marginalized group. So think about both from a gender perspective, as well as by age and by stage of their career. So again, a lot of the work that we'll do with women's leadership programs will only focus on those women who are bumping their head up against the glass ceiling or who have already made it to a director level or a VP level. And so think about what kind of support and resources do you have to help advance everyone, even as they're starting out in their careers, so that you can help start to level out the playing field as you go along. And certainly, of course, I'll give a little plug to our women's leadership online training program called Career Excel. Anybody's interested, feel free to check that out at careerexcel.us or shoot me a note. But the idea was to create a program that allows women globally at whatever time of the day works for them to be able to understand what are those key competencies that they need to help advance in the workplace. Now, one of the most important things you can do from a control perspective is measure what you treasure. So as I had said earlier, if you don't know where you are today, it's really hard to build a roadmap of where it is that you want to go. And so one of the really great organizations that's out there is a nonprofit called Gender Fair. In the chat, just let me know, say yes or no. Have you heard of Gender Fair before? And have you looked up how your company fares on Gender Fair? If you've looked it up, put a yes in the chat, and if not, give me a no. Get everybody weighing in here. Okay, so I'm seeing lots of no's so far. Okay, so this is a perfect example. It's free. You can go on, put in your company, and they will let you know how your company is rated. Again, really great ammunition to have those internal conversations with HR, D&I, and your executive team. And if you are a company that is not currently in the ratings, there is a very easy assessment that you can go through that will help you understand whether or not your organization would score high as it relates to the Gender Fair measures. They're LEAP measures across leadership, which is composition of women on the board and executive roles, employee policies, so making sure that there's inclusive benefits for both moms and dads. We want to make sure that those men can take their paternity leave. That's just as important as women being able to take their time. And that's why when we talk about inclusivity, it's including everyone, okay? Making sure that pay equity is fair across the board. Advertising. So this is one of those important areas. Do you have stereotypical images in your advertising and marketing? Stereotypical language, stereotypical roles. So is dad the bumbling idiot who doesn't know how to cook a meal or diaper a child? Or is he that equal partner who, or even taking the lead on a lot of those household responsibilities, which can really start to change some of those gender norms? And finally, from a purpose perspective, what are the initiatives that your organization has in place to support equality and develop women in the workplace? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, okay? So let's continue on with our fearless fundamentals, and let's talk a bit about courage, because this is one of the areas that is especially near and dear to my heart, and that is something that we've also seen from the WE.DOOH advisory board, that self-advocacy and self-promotion is a really big challenge for women. And now this chart, when you look at the numbers, a little bit different than the last one. This is, if you're strong at this, you'd be higher up on the chart. And so again, women are in royal blue, men are in teal. And so you can see across every one of these questions that was asked, when it comes to things like negotiating, advocating for yourself, presenting to peers or superiors, speaking up in meetings or strategic networking, women do not have that same feeling of courageousness across all of these areas. Now, this is why the work that the DPAA and we do is so incredibly important, because hopefully many, if not all of you, had joined us recently for our two-part negotiating workshop that we had, and we will have another strategic networking event coming up. Hopefully some of you have been in the Build Your Personal Board of Directors, and we have another program that's coming up around self-advocacy. So this is why this is so important. But one of the easiest things that you can do that's also a little bit fun is the next time you find yourself hesitating to do any of those things that are important, negotiating, speaking up, advocating for yourself, think about what would be that music that would fill the stadium or fill the movie theater if you needed that little dose of courage. So what would be that anthem for you? I don't know why it is that you're supposed to storm the field or enter the boxing ring with music blasting that gets your blood pumping, but at work it's usually dead silence or maybe a little bit of buzz from the fluorescent lights. So what would be your courage anthem? What is that song that gets your adrenaline flowing? And share it with all of us. Put it right now into the chat. We want to hear what's your anthem so that we can all help each other through this. And the next time you get into that moment, perhaps it's around sharing your idea in a meeting, and you think, oh, it's stupid, or nobody's going to be behind it, or people are going to think I'm wasting their time. Tune into that song in your head. And as soon as you do, you will have a chemical response and feel a little bit more of that adrenaline pumping through you. So let's see, do we have any courage anthems out here? Ooh, Victory by The Weeknd. Thank you, Sam. Now, I will tell you, as we see some of these come through, I will share for anyone who's interested, we have created a Fearless Anthems Make Your Mark mix based on of all the different workshops that we do, hearing everybody's anthems. And so if you need a little extra pep in your step, we're gonna add the songs that come up here, and then we'll share out the DPAA version of the Fearless Anthems mix. So next time you need a little bit of courage, you can play that. We've got some great songs here, and actually some new ones. I'm really excited. Many times I'll see the same ones over and over and over, but we've got a whole bunch of new ones. So thank you for sharing. And again, if you need a real extra dose of courage, you can go in the bathroom or put in your AirPods or whatever and actually play the song. But the reality is, if you just think about that song in your own head, it will give you the same biochemical response. So don't hesitate to do that. Thank you for sharing those courage anthems. And so the other thing with courage is, and to me, the real definition of it is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And the reality is being able to create a more inclusive culture where you're now hearing from people who may not be like you or who may see the world differently than you could be scary. And so I love this quote from Mark Twain of, do the thing you fear most and the death of fear is certain. So whatever it is that you're scared of, what I like to say is make a plan for it. And again, thank you for sharing those anthems in the chat. Tell us, what is that thing that you fear most when it comes to creating an inclusive culture? What is most difficult for you? And we hear all kinds of things. We hear from some men that they feel like they're now being excluded and they're not part of it anymore, or they're at a disadvantage. We hear from people that they don't know how they would react if they hear totally different kinds of ideas that they haven't had the chance to think through before. They may feel uncomfortable and that there's not going to be common ground that they can share with other people. And so really think about that for you specifically. What is the toughest thing for you? And then you can always create a plan of how you're going to accomplish that. Now, one of the things that we hear pretty consistently when we have real conversations about hearing everyone's voice. So you may be one of many who's on these town hall Zoom calls where you've got a whole bunch of people, or it's a management call where there's 35 people on it or 12 people, whatever it might be. And there's generally one person speaking, maybe 3 to 5 at most. But what's really important to create a culture of inclusivity is to hear everyone's voice. And what happens many times, those marginalized communities are less likely to speak up in those very public settings. But that means that you are going to miss out on brilliant and creative ideas, as well as miss out on the ability to make everyone feel together and one. And so I'm going to give you all, and again, this is helpful, hopefully, for every one of you, regardless of your position. This will help make your meetings, your conversations more inclusive. That will help people in every marginalized community, but across your team. So we're going to focus on a few of these. So polls and data visualization. The easiest one, I know that most people today are using Zoom or Teams. And if you take literally 2 minutes in advance of a meeting to think about what is a question that I can ask that will get everybody being able to weigh in immediately in a poll, then you can go into your account settings and in a moment create a poll that then when you are in the session itself, you can just hit, it'll say polls, and you can pick which of those polls that you want to add. And again, it takes a maximum of 2 to 3 minutes in order to do it, but it's a way for everyone to feel like they are part of something together. I'm also, as some of you have seen now in the workshops that I do, I'm a really big fan of this data visualization and polling platform called Mentimeter.com. For most of the large organizations that are out there, this is a very inexpensive way to really bring to life how you can have people sharing different things. As you saw earlier, you can have everything from charts and graphs and word clouds and open text boxes. And Mary Jo, my fearless right hand, just put into the chat for you, again, the name of the company, menti.com. I don't get paid anything by them. So just so you know, I'm not promoting any of these companies because I'm getting paid anything. It's just because I believe in them and see how helpful they are. So let's talk about the chat. As you've seen here, I have asked a few times, share what you're thinking in the chat. It does take a little bit of time in advance to think of what is the question that I'm going to ask so that everybody can have a voice, but it's a great way to make everyone feel included. Another really important thing you need to do as a leader is to call on specific attendees. So if you know that there are marginalized folks who are going to be in that meeting, who are going to be reticent or hesitate to speak up in a large group, then give them an opportunity to talk. Give them the floor. Don't just let the same 3 people have their voice heard over and over and over. You can actually call out people. You can also, even before you call out people specifically in a positive way, you can also say, we want to make sure we're hearing from everyone today. So after you've weighed in, thank you so much for weighing in. We want to hear some of those other voices that are out there. Another great way to bring everyone together, you saw me do it a few times. Hey, give me a little hand up, give me a thumbs up. You can use the emoticons that are built into any of the video conference platforms. Do what's authentic for you. I like to say sometimes, give me a little what? That may not work for some of you, and that is just fine. Do what is authentic. And then finally, use breakout rooms. So this is a fantastic functionality that's built into all of these that will allow everyone to talk in small groups, and then you can have everybody weigh in together. And we're going to do that towards the end of our session today. Now, when we get back to the real world, I also want you to think about employing design thinking principles into your meetings to also give everybody a fair share at creative ideas. And so what you can do is you have a meeting, and how great is it going to be with other people again? I can't wait. But you have a meeting and you have a big piece of paper, or you can put it up on the wall or a whiteboard where everybody gets a little Post-it note, and they put up any of their ideas all over the wall. And then everybody gets little stickers, an equal number of stickers. Let's say they get 5 stickers, and they can choose to put 1 or all of them on the idea that they think is the best. And then you take from that and then you start refining and refining. And how do you make that idea better and better? And it's such an easy, free way to make sure that in many of those marginalized groups are getting to have an equal say, and that it's not just that group think over and over, and get that fresh thinking out there. And for those of you who are interested in building up your courage a little bit more, please remember, we have 2 ways that we can help you immediately. So we'll have the workshop, hopefully it'll be in person, that will be coming up later this year. And then on the DPAA website, within the WE.DOOH section, we have a whole host of Fearless in 5 videos, thanks to DPAA, that can help you in terms of building both your courage and your confidence. So definitely check that out on the DPAA website. Okay, so let's move on to communication. So this is such an important topic that we had an entire in-person workshop for the women of WE.DOOH about maybe 7 or 8 months ago or so. But we want to focus, because this is now bringing everybody together on some of those key things that, again, from a leader perspective and from the male ally perspective, some of those things that you need to be aware of. So first and foremost, if you remember nothing else from this workshop, I want you to remember the double bind. And what this is research shows that when men need to be seen as a leader, they need to communicate with what's called stereotypically male attributes of being clear, direct, decisive, and assertive. That's what they need to be a leader. Women need to be seen as being what's called pro-social, of looking at what's best for the group. And they need to have stereotypically feminine communication traits, being empathetic, warm, caring. Now, the double bind is that if women are only demonstrating those feminine attributes, they get dinged big time. They're not seen as leaders. But women who communicate only like men and don't bring in the warmth, caring, and empathy get called all those naughty B words of bossy, brash, bitchy, and a sort of B word, abrasive. And so it is so critical that for the women here, remember, it's okay to be warm and caring, but you do need to communicate clearly, directly, assertively as well. And you have every right to do that. Just because you're a woman doesn't mean that you cannot be clear, direct, and assertive. But what this also means for the men is that we need to stop holding women to a higher standard. And we should all be communicating with the double bind. The modern male leader is communicating with warmth, empathy, and being clear and direct at the same time. And so let's all start being conscious of this, but not holding anyone to a higher standard. And I'll give you one little trick of how I try and help women understand how to do this. And men, is to still show that warmth and caring, is to start off the conversation with humanity and ask about Bob's grandmother, or ask about Samantha's boyfriend and how things are going, or how is she dealing with COVID. But then when you get into the meat of in the heart of the conversation, get right to the point and be clear and direct to what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Okay, don't couch it so that people are confused by what you're asking for, because you're adding all kinds of fluffy language around it. Be nice, be warm, be caring. The start and the end, think of it as like an Oreo, and right in the middle, the white is getting right to the point. Okay, now we talked a little bit earlier when we were having everybody weigh in from the mentee about managing interruptions, and that's because women are interrupted at a rate of 3 times more than men in the workplace. And in fact, a research study that was done looking at all of the history of the Supreme Court showed that female justices are also interrupted at a rate of 3 times their male justices. And by the way, it's illegal for an attorney to interrupt a Supreme Court justice. Only female Supreme Court justices have been interrupted. Okay, so this is something that we need to stop. And so one of those ideas that you saw, as we talked about this earlier, is creating a monitor for every big meeting, or even small meetings where you see interruptions happen frequently, and switch off who's in charge of holding people out. But we can all be upstanders. Okay, and that means don't just stand by if you see that somebody, again, regardless of gender, race, age, whatever it might be, gets interrupted and cut off all the time, be an upstander. And it's as simple as saying, hey, Bob, I really want to hear what you have to say. Hold that thought and let Jen finish. The more you practice using words like this, the easier it will be when you're actually in the scenario. And that's because words matter. We'll talk a little bit here about some of those words you want to strike from your vocabulary. So for all of the men and women, we want to make sure that we are eliminating some of these negative terms. And I'm saying that because we know, girls, we can be way meaner to each other than the men can be to the women, quite frankly. And we're all guilty of it. So again, just like we choose our own adventure from here, let's stop holding the women to a higher standard when we are women ourselves. Okay, so we want to get rid of those negative terms. We also need to get rid of those perceived positive terms, describing women based on their physical attributes, even if it doesn't seem sexual at all. Describing as a woman as pretty, or she's so petite and small, or she's cute and adorable, puts her into a different bucket. Remember what I talked about earlier about affinity bias. If I am a tall, strong man, then I want to do business with tall, strong men. And I'm going to share a little story with you. I was at a conference one time and I was talking to a potential client. Now, this is the beauty of video conferencing. Many of you may not know that I am 5'2", but I am not very tall. So I'm at this conference talking to a potential client of mine who is about 6'2", big guy. Up comes a competitor of mine, and he is 6'6". And he is also trying to get to that same client. And he turns and he looks at me like this, you know, looks all the way down. He goes, turns to the potential client for both of us and goes, isn't she adorable? And I was like, oh my God, I am not a bunny or a baby. And guess what? Nobody wants to do business with bunnies or babies. And so now he just put me into that separate bucket of, she's not one of us. Don't do business with her. Do business with me. And so this is, again, one of those areas where you think you may be kind. It's not. And clearly that strikes a chord with me. And then obviously there's the sexual connotations that go in. So whether it's overtly sexual or even just getting to gender of calling someone sweetheart or honey, talking about things looking sexy, or certainly bedroom banter, which I've seen still to this day and by people in very high positions as well. You want to make sure that take that out. And so you might be wondering, what can you say that, right? Well, my favorite example of what you can say for any man is just think of the guy test. So if Barry would turn to Blake and say, hey, your hair looks great, and Barry would turn to me and say, hey, your hair looks great, go ahead and say it. But if Barry might turn to me and say, and Barry, don't take this wrong, I'm just using your name, hey, your legs look great in that dress. Well, he has to ask himself, would he turn to Blake and say, hey, Blake, your legs look great in that dress? No. And now if Blake wants to wear a dress, that's his own business. But either way, if you wouldn't give the same compliment, because that's a big question men have when I talk to them privately. Well, can I not compliment anyone anymore? Of course you can. We all need to be nice and kind to each other. But if it's a compliment that crosses that line and you're not exactly sure how it's going to be perceived and you wouldn't say it to a guy, don't say it to a woman. Okay. The other thing I like to say, if you're still not sure about it, use the grandmother test. And that is, if you told your grandma that you said this to a woman at work, would she slap you upside the head and be like, what are you thinking? That's not how you talk to a woman. Then that's a real simple and easy one that you can keep in mind. In our confident communications course that we did several months back, we went through the 7 deadly speaking sins that take away the power and that are used by women at a higher rate than men, that distills the message that we're trying to get out there. So for all the women out there, be conscious of these. But for the men, it's also really important, again, if you're a manager or a leader, to help the women on your team understand what some of that terminology or the language that they're using that might take away some of their power and control in the workplace. And so if you want to learn more about that, we have bonus material that you can check out on the Wet Cement website. Normally this is only for clients, but in COVID land, we are making it free for everyone. So you would just use passcode FEARLESS when you go to the exclusive materials section. We'll make that available to all of you. And the other thing is, it relates to communication you want to keep in mind right now, is that you want to, and this was really great, I thought, visual to help from the United Nations We Empower movement, of what all of us need to keep in mind, but especially leaders who want to create an inclusive environment. What are these 4 different dimensions that someone may be dealing with right now? Because we're all in a different place. And I think this is helpful for everyone to keep in mind, because you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Somebody may show up looking fine in the Zoom call, but in fact, they may be dealing with violence at home. They may be dealing with homeschooling several children, or having young children who are not even busy with homeschooling at times and may be absolutely frazzled. Certainly they may be living with parents in addition to with children. And so there's a lot of these different efforts or different inputs that can really make it difficult, especially for marginalized groups. So women, research has shown, are bearing more of the brunt of what's happening with our current uncertain time that we're dealing with. And also a lot of minority groups are more likely to live in intergenerational homes where it's magnifying the problems that they have. So just be sensitive to that and keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to move on to connection. And so what I want you to do is think about how important it is across these 3 different areas, if you want to build an inclusive environment, to connect your teams. So first and foremost, let's start with networking. If you don't already have in your organization employee resource groups that are focused on life stages or marginalized groups that you may identify with, so the Asian American group, the LGBT group, the women's group, the working moms group, then those are really helpful to have a place for people to feel like they belong and that they can connect with others who are dealing with some of the same issues. You also want to create business networking groups. So these are where it's more about the business or the skill that you want to help facilitate throughout the organization. And then there's across the industry, like the amazing work that the DPAA is doing here with WE.DOOH. And according to Harvard research, there are so many benefits of networking, of not only does it help advance our knowledge, but again, another more fuel for innovation. It helps people advance quicker, and actually the quality of work goes up the more people are connecting. But research from the National Academy of Sciences shows that women need a different kind of network than men. So while men need a diverse network and can have a few different friends in their core group that they use from a networking perspective, or colleagues or former employees, whatever it might be, women also need to have a core network of all women, but women who do not know each other very well, so that each one of those women bring a unique and discrete network to the table. And that's because research that for the last 50 years or so shows that what's called weak ties, or that second level connection, or the third level connection, is what actually will have the biggest impact on your success. So think about creating that network where you've got one of your allies and others who don't necessarily know each other. And this is also one of the differences between men and women. Men have no problem creating a network where they know it's to help advance their business. Women tend to feel like it should be more of an emotional connection and a friendship behind it. And so that's why many times women might have a very small network of women who all really know each other and are very close to each other. So they're not expanding out just how far reaching and those second and third levels, because then when you have these discrete networks, it really opens up your entire world that will help with business. And in fact, according to the research that we did at Wet Cement, women believe that they're not that great at networking, even when compared to men. And so the one little gift I'll give you here is to get into a gift giving mindset. And don't think of networking as that awkward, sleazy thing where you're just trying to get ahead with somebody else. But really focus on what are the gifts that you have to give to the world. Maybe it's even just that you're an effective listener. Maybe it's that you're a problem solver. Maybe it's that you're really connected because you've worked at a number of different companies and you can help introduce that other person. But if you go into this of thinking, I want to help give some of my gifts to other people, once I know what matters to them, then it becomes a really fun experience. And we'll talk a lot more about this in the workshop that we have coming up on September 30th that will help us get ready for Digital Signage Week and certainly the DPAA Video Everywhere Summit that will be on October 13th. One other little trick of networking right now, if you take your phone and you try and take a picture of this, it will go directly to my LinkedIn page so that you can link into me. So do you have your QR code, essentially, from LinkedIn saved as an image on your phone? If not, do it. And then anywhere you go, you can put it on your PowerPoints, you can put it on proposals, any communication that you're sending out, you can save this image and then use that so you make it that people can instantly connect with you. Okay, let's talk about a few other ways you need to connect your teams. Mentoring, one of the most important things that you can do. And I want you to think about 3 different ways to do this, especially if you're a leader within your organization. Because most of the time people will just say, oh, you know, putting a mentoring program into place across the organization is a very big undertaking and we don't have the resources or the time for that. I hear you. It is very important, but there's a lot of other things that you can do, and that's what we're going to talk about right here. So you've got the one-on-ones. You can just encourage people to reach out to people that they respect, that they want to learn from, that they look at and they say, 3 to 5 years, I want to be in that position, and just invite them to coffee. It's as simple as that. You can invite them to virtual coffee right now. But there's 2 other things that I want you to think about as a leader. One is about creating mentoring circles. And this is where you have 2 different leaders within your organization, generally from disparate divisions or departments, who will then mentor a group of proteges who are further behind in their career. And what that will do is not only give all of those people, and especially women who need more of that mentoring help because they're less likely to get it, it gives them more diverse perspectives, but it also will bond and connect those women in the group. And it will show very clearly how different people's styles are and perspectives on the world and really help foster inclusivity. And again, this is important for everyone across the board. We need women to be mentoring men. We need men to be mentoring women and vice versa. And then finally, the last thing, I will hear quite a bit that, well, we'd love to give more visibility to our top female leaders or Black leaders or LGBT leaders, but they're very busy and they don't have the time to help with things like mentoring. Well, one recommendation I would have is to create leader brown bag lunches. And this can be done in person or virtually, where you have that leader say, I'm hosting a brown bag lunch, bring your own lunch, so it doesn't even cost the company $1. And for 45 minutes, let's have lunch together. Come prepared to share any question that you have. And I might share 3 tidbits that, boy, do I wish that I knew when I was starting in my career or 10 years ago. And this is a way that you can essentially get group mentoring in a short amount of time. You can do it virtually, and it doesn't cost your company $1. And it is important because, again, while mentoring is one of the most important things we all could and should be doing for our career, only 1 in 5 managers, according to our research, have a mentor today. 1 in 5. And men are more likely to mentor others than women. So of just looking at the manager level in professional organizations in the US, only 1 out of 4 women are mentoring others. Again, a lot of different variables there. We're very busy, but then there's also the self-limiting beliefs and mindset of, well, what do I have to offer anybody? What do I know that's helpful? So we need to change that, because the only way the next generation is going to change is if we have everybody mentoring each other. And finally, connect your team through purpose. One organization that I really love is called Working for Women. And because what they do is they are helping elevate women in the workforce by they're helping women who are getting out of homeless shelters and incarceration and get back on the street, dress for success. So they help raise money for other nonprofits by using what's called skills-based giving. So if you are an organization like Clear Channel and you have your group is based brilliant marketers, rather than those brilliant marketers going out and doing their cause event of cleaning up trash in a park, which is really sort of a waste of their skills and ability, those brilliant marketers will help organizations like Address for Success with their marketing so that they can get more investment and more donations. Or if it's an organization, again, I'll just use Clear Channel again as an example there. You may be using some of your inventory that you have to help these nonprofits in need. So it's really thinking about how do you use your skills and talents to help others, which is such a great way to connect everyone together. Okay, so last little piece here that we're focusing on is confidence. And again, we had our Confident Connections workshop that we did that was attended by women last fall. But it's really important for leaders to understand what a critical component this is of holding people back in their career. So according to research that was done last year, 2 out of 3 women will have the feeling of imposter syndrome, of being a fraud, a fake, or getting found out that they're not really good enough in any typical year. And there's a few different ways that they may experience this. So there's the expert, which feels like, well, I'm not going to vie for that management position, or I'm not going to go for the promotion until I get more credibility or experience or an accreditation. You have the superhero who thinks everybody else is the real deal, but they're the only one who's a phony or a fake. And so they take on way too much because they're looking for that external validation from other people saying, great job on this, which helps them feel good about themselves. And we also see quite frequently the perfectionist. That person who sets the bar so impossibly high for themselves. And if they miss it by even a hair, they will just berate themselves of what a failure they are and how they totally missed the mark. And then it will hold them back again from taking a bigger risk or a bigger leap the next time. And when we're thinking about innovation, it is critical to understand this imposter syndrome mindset and how it holds people back, because people are not willing to expose themselves and put themselves out there and bring the big creative and unique idea to the table if they fit some of these criteria. And so what I encourage you to do in your organization, and certainly if you feel this yourself, is to start embracing imperfection. It's actually a Japanese philosophy called wabi-sabi. And the wabi part of it is about looking for imperfection and seeing that as beautiful. Seeing the patina as something special, or the nicks and cuts in a teacup, the asymmetry in a garden, that is what's special and unique. So you want to keep that in mind for yourself and for your team. And as a manager, you need to know that sometimes you're going to have to push that woman right off the cliff. Not actually, please do not do that. I don't want to get sued or a DPAA. But you may need to give her that little push to say, you know what? I know you're a perfectionist and you want this to be at 100%. We're at 80%. That's good enough for right now, because what we need to do is know it's not perfect. And so let's get going and we'll start learning and iterating and evolving with time. Okay, so put that 80% rule into practice at your workplace. And the other thing as a male leader or manager is know that marginalized groups have a much harder time asking for help and admitting mistakes. And so you can change that by changing the course of your team meetings. And so rather than talking about everything that went great over the course of the past week or month or quarter, start over with what are some of the do-overs? What lessons do you want to learn from? And then be a role model yourself and start over by sharing one experience that you wish you had a do-over on. And then take it a step further and ask for everyone to weigh in on how you could have seen that problem, issue, or challenge differently, or what you could have done. And now you're really going to get that collective intelligence from the team, and people will start seeing the value of what everybody else brings to the table. But they'll also know that it's okay to make mistakes and that we all need do-overs in life, and we're only going to get stronger once we see them. And then certainly if you were in that course, and for everyone out there, make sure you are building your confidence catalog every single week. So if you haven't done this yet, grab your phone, make a recurring calendar appointment with yourself for just 5 minutes every Friday, and look back on your week and say, what did I do this week that I'm proud of? And then look forward and say, what am I going to do next week so that I'm going to be proud again? And if you look back on that week and there was nothing to add to your confidence catalog, you better spend more time planning for next week, because you wasted a whole week reading email or calls where maybe you just sat there silently and never said a word. And again, as a leader or a manager, this is a very powerful tool to deploy with your team, because then when you're doing your weekly one-on-ones with your team, you can ask them the question, what'd you add to your confidence catalog? What are you proud of this week? And you'll very quickly start to know, do they not give themselves credit for anything? Do they completely underestimate their worth? Are they spending time in the wrong places of doing the work that doesn't really matter because that's what somebody told them to do? And as we saw earlier, they don't feel empowered at work to speak up and bring some of those big things to the table. Okay, so time-wise, I think we're supposed to be having about 13 more minutes. So I want all of you to remember, you are the butterflies. You, even if you feel you only have a little change to make, you can make that transformation. And certainly if you need help, our team at What's Meant would love to help you, whether it's with speaking, training, coaching, or consulting. We love doing this work. This is our reason for getting up in the morning. But what I want you to think about right now is, after we shared a lot of different ideas today, and again, everything is in that handout. So take the time, make the commitment to yourself and to your organization to spend some time with that and think about how are you going to put that into practice. And then what is, for each of you, what is the one action that you will take in the next week? Just one thing to start with that you are going to do differently in the next week. And what we're going to do is we're going to share, not in chat, not through Mentimeter. We are going to share and all talk together, so that not only can we learn together, but maybe we can even make a few friends in the process. Okay, so it seems like we are getting most of everyone back here together, and I would love to hear from those of you who are still here, anything that was maybe a common thread or stood out for you of something that you're going to do in the next week. Kate, do you want to share?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to share, and then I'm going to call out some other people. No, I'm joking. For me, what resonated was the confidence catalog. For me, having a bit of a challenge, keeping people focused from one week to the next. I feel like we're suffering from a bit of this amnesia as we go from Friday through the weekend to Monday. So being able to reinforce with my team the value of what they have contributed that week and then keep them focused for the following week is really important. So aside from probably drink many drinks, I will definitely do the confidence catalog. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll also say, Amanda Shepley, if you're here with us, and you can share what you saw in your group. We'd love to hear from you.
We had a great session, so thank you for encouraging us to all do that. I think that everybody gets a little shy having to come off of their video muting. So the confidence calendar was something that came up in our group. Also, the tools within the video conferencing to create more of an inclusive environment for sharing, especially for large groups. So using polling, incorporating a moderator, things that are going to get people engaged was another thing that we thought could be easy to apply. right away off of the heels of this workshop. And then the other thing that we kind of talked about for a little bit is how we think that this whole situation, as terrible as it is actually going to be very productive and helpful for inclusion and diversity, because this is somewhat of an equalizer, and you're trying to, everybody is really putting themselves in other people's shoes. So whether that's you have young kids at home, like you said, that you're having to take care of, or maybe you share an apartment with several roommates and you don't have your own personal space. So some of those behaviors, some of that empathy, we feel are going to be a positive outcome to the workforce and the work environment, just for the pure sake of everybody's kind of going through this thing at the same time. So we're hoping that has a positive impact on inclusion and diversity.
That's wonderful to hear. And based on all of the world leaders who are talking about diversity and inclusion, it is a very thin line to walk. It could be something that absolutely helps people if it is embraced and recognized, and then a lot of the lessons being learned are reinforced, or it could be something that really ends up hurting marginalized groups. As we talked about, if women are taking on the lion's share of the housework and the homeschooling, and they're doing a lot more work there, that's that invisible work. So it's up to all of us to make sure that we come through this stronger together. And so again, I want to thank you all for your time. I want to remind you of those upcoming events that we have through DPAA's WE.DOOH program over the course of the year. So July 15th, we're supposed to be having our summer networking event. Boy, do I wish we could be on a fabulous rooftop having rosé together in person, but we may all just need to be enjoying our rosé together, but virtually. We'll figure that one out. So
bring your computers to the roof.
there you go. We can all do it outside together. We'll be outside together. And then as I had mentioned, September 30th is all about networking and building your connections to level up your career. And we'll reinforce even some of the concepts that we had focused on in a workshop that we did, I think, 1 or 2 years ago around building your personal board of directors, but really level it up from there. And then to get everybody in the right mindset for the Video Everywhere Summit, that'll help everyone get into the right mindset for the Video Everywhere Summit on October 13th. And November 10th, I'm really excited for this one. It's our self-advocacy and self-promotion workshop that we'll be doing, which we saw was one of the top challenges based on input from our advisory board. So with that, I want to again thank all of you for your time, your attention, and for sharing with each other, and for making a commitment to creating more inclusive cultures and the industry that we all work in. So you can always feel free to contact me directly. And again, we have more of that material for you that you can get on the Wet Cement website using the passcode Fearless. And so I will stay on for a few more minutes. If anyone has any questions, feedback, comment, or wants to talk more, I will be here, and I'm happy to stay on as long as you have questions. And if not, I want to give a huge thank you to Barry, Ajay, and Blake, and the entire team at the DPAA for supporting the Women's Empowerment Initiative, not only just for DPAA member companies, but for the entire industry. I am so grateful to have allies and partners like all of you.